'Tis a fine foggy night tonight, and I doubt if anyone has ever told you of the marvelous fogs we have in Aberdeen.
Oh, God!
Eugene.
Bakersfield.
Los Angeles.
San Francisco.
He wasn't giving me my props in Oaktown.
Portland. Los Angeles.
Los Angeles de California.
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
You gotta find your Irvine.
Irvine?
Hanford.
Eugene.
Seattle.
Seattle.
Seattle. Sacramento.
Fresno.
We're going to Vancouver.
Modesto, California.
San Diego.
Gina.
You know, there might be an opening for a manager in Visalia next spring.
Yakima, right?
Vallejo, California, the V.
Welcome to the West Coast Sojourn Podcast. This is Donnell Alexander, and I'm here with my co-host,
Lev Anderson, up here in Portland, the living hell of Portland.
I'm in Sacramento. It's so funny you should say that because I was just complaining to a friend here in Sacramento about the social media posts that show the idyllic Portland. You know, are you seeing those? Like, it's not hell.
Yeah, some people. Yeah, I've seen maybe one or two posts. Yeah, I didn't know it was a thing, but
Oh no, it's a thing, and I'm out in the numbers most of the time, and it's kind of fucked up out in the numbers. Not especially, but just regular American fucked up.
Well, that's Gresham, right? Is that Gresham or is that Portland?
Not quite Gresham. We're talking about 50 blocks from Gresham. Anything after 82nd Street. I don't want to say anything, but it's such a different world, and I feel like most Oregonians, most Portlanders don't see that.
Oh, I agree with you there. I mean, I don't go out there a lot myself, but it is a different world, and you know, it's the margins of the city, so it's it's a little bit more wild.
Yeah, I think it's part of us needing to be honest with ourselves. That's, I think, a lot of the openings that get created for the fascists is from our well-intentioned, self-absorbed perspectives that we insist on projecting out into the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Today we have who? Do you want to tell us something about our guest?
Former NFL punter Chris Kluwe, who first gained notice speaking out politically while he was a football player. Kind of, I guess it was pre-Kaepernick. We didn't get to talk about Colin Kaepernick at all. Mm-hmm. But Chris seems like and he's running for state assembly in Orange County. And he's the kind of guy that I think we need more of in politics. He seems to genuinely care about the people and the issues. And, so many politicians, I feel like these days are just kind of running for their post-political career. Like then they can become lobbyists or some other kind of power brokers and up their presence economically or whatever by first, serving the people. But Chris doesn't seem like that, so it's kind of a fun to talk to somebody, especially in this day and age with all the madness.
Yeah, well, he's very left-leaning, and I think he came to the attention of defending gay rights, which I think came out of like a personal ethos more than any sort of political stance. But he's on the Fox radar, the Fox News radar right now. Did you see his reaction to Charlie Kirk's death? Has got them in an uproar.
I haven't watched enough Fox News lately.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go through everything he says, but he talks about things, and as he does on this podcast, in a very articulate, thought-out manner with organized thoughts, but that's not going to be good enough to avoid being distorted by Fox,
It's kind of impossible not to be. It almost feels like anything that they regurgitate has got this Fox slime on it that it serves their interest in creating a dedicated following.
But at the same time, he's in the New Republic today. I just saw that just before we started recording, and I think there's a benefit there. We talk about it a little bit in the interview, the conversation, that name recognition is spread out across the country, but the fact that you have it's what means that you can get in the New Republic despite having a very limited political record. There's a benefit in there, don't you think?
Oh yeah, and fundraising too, right? You get to the attention of people that might have deeper pockets, that they might not live in his district, but they might contribute to his campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that there's my son is active in politics, and he insists to me that this Trump thing is unsustainable because there's so much stupidity and so much inexperience with government in the mix. I think that things are going to swing back left. This is the most optimistic version of what I have here. Sometimes I think we're doing this for 40 years, but that there's a swing leftward. I would think that having people like him in the mix, not just Chris specifically, who I think is very articulate and brave, but people who aren't part of the machinery of politics getting in. Do you see that happening? Is that a possibility that you buy?
Well, I mean, I think, Trump laid the groundwork, right, for non-politicians to be successful in the political arena. And I think it's okay, because I do feel like the Democratic Party has a lot of problems, and that they have catered a lot to economic elites in the past. And getting somebody that's not roped into that fundraising strategy or that, those same old talking points that annoy other people apparently, I think it's good. I think citizens should be stepping up, and as long as they're informed and they know what they're doing, and they're not just doing it for their own self-aggrandizement or for their own kind of narrow views of what it means to be an American or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because I think all politicians are inherently egotistical. They think that they know better, but
right.
It's that question of what you're talking about. I think that whether you're an honest broker is a big part of it. We talked a little bit about the media narratives and what people do understand and what they don't understand. I think I was just writing this morning that, it doesn't matter what you do, but if people don't see it, you could be pooping your pants for all it matters, But, all these great successes or any success, any sort of victory, Trump promotes every victory. He promotes every development as a victory. And
right.
Anyway, the channels that we succeed on are just marginally. We're not winning at the algorithm. And I say we, I mean anyone who's not a Republican right now. Because I need to make clear, I haven't been a Democrat in years. Whenever I'm a Democrat, it's a primary, and I accidentally left myself as a Democrat because I do not approve of so much. But yeah, these channels are, I think, very limiting in terms of gains in the media.
Yeah, putting out these alternate voices, narrations, perspectives of what it means to be a progressive right now. Democrats do not have a monopoly on that. Mm-hmm. And Chris mentions, the large amount of independence now. I do feel like some people did kind of shy away from the Democratic Party to become independents. I think it started more as support for Bernie, maybe, or like more progressive visions, and lately maybe other factors. I don't know.
Well, I think Chris is going to do really well. And I think it's like, I don't want to call him a bellwether, but, someone who's got such left-leaning politics in a place like his district includes Huntington Beach, which that was a site of a big neo-Nazi protest in support of Charlie Kirk this weekend. If he can do well there, I think that a lot of people can succeed, But let's just talk to him and talk a little football too. You've got to talk a little football, right?
Oh, we bring that to the mix, right?
Right.
Chris Kluwe, welcome to the West Coast Sojourn podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, all right, and we were glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Chris. You've had your football career. You kind of became more well known beyond football with some of your activism in the mid 2000s around gay and gender issues, and then and now you're running for state assembly. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm running for California Assembly District 72, which is in Orange County. It's 4 coastal beach towns, and then 3 cities that are a little bit inland.
And it doesn't go as far south as Irvine, right? That's a separate spot.
Yeah, no, it kind of stops like right before Irvine. So basically, it's Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, and that's as far south as it goes. And then it goes up into Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods, and Aliso Viejo.
Okay. Yeah, I lived in Irvine for like 6 years. But before we get to the political side of things, I know we wanted to talk a little bit of football. We're both football fans, and so we wanted to start there if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to be clear. I think football's corrosive. It's an addiction and a religion. And I have very complicated thoughts, but I am an addict and I deal with football. But I wanted to talk about the Silicon Valley Bowl. Do you remember that game?
Yep. I do remember that.
What happened? What happened? This is not just to kiss your ass. I have a real point to get to here.
So the Silicon Valley Bowl, I want to say that was my junior year at UCLA, and we were playing against Fresno State, and I got the special teams MVP for the game.
So what has to happen for you to get the special teams in? Because it didn't go to a kicker, didn't go to a punt returner, or the guy who's tackling. What did you do? How did you impact the game?
Yeah, so what has to happen is your offense has to do very badly, so that way you get to punt a lot, and then you have to punt the ball really well. And I actually had a really good game. I had I think like three punts inside the 20, and I think they were actually like inside the 10 and inside the 5.
You think? You don't remember that for sure, do you?
But yeah, it was not a great showing for UCLA. I do not believe we won that game.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, but you impacted the game is what I'm saying. Like, it's a necessary part of football. The punter is critical. You gave them some kind of advantage or kept them in the game.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So basically, as a punter, you're doing your job properly if you give your defense the longest field possible to work with, right? Because the longer the field is that they have to defend, the more likely it is the opponent's drive is going to stall out. So really, when you do your job correctly, no one really cheers. You're just kind of to have expected to have done it. And it's when you mess up, that's when everyone's like, why didn't you do it right?
So why do you think the discourse on kickers is so bad? I think, to me, I think it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, the discourse on kickers has always been bad. And the reason why is because people don't understand the actual fundamentals of punting and kicking. And so they see us out there kicking the ball and they're like, oh, I could kick a ball. Like I could get up off my couch and do that. And what they don't realize is it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of practice, but also you have to actually understand some tiny little intricacies that go into properly punting and kicking a football. Because like a lot of people see soccer players, right? And they're like, oh, soccer players can kick the ball really far. Why aren't they all kicking field goals? And why aren't we seeing, 70-yard field goals? And the difference is in soccer, if you score one goal during a game, you have done fantastic. Like you did your job. Everyone's super happy. In football, if you miss one field goal in a game, everyone's super upset. So you actually have to learn how to give up some of your power in order to develop the technique necessary to have that 95% consistency, because the team's relying on you to do that job every single time you go out on the field.
Yeah. I watched San Francisco beat Seattle last week, but the kicker got a kick blocked. And I was in a bar with a bunch of people. I remember thinking, that guy's getting fired because I'd seen him do it before. Why am I blanking on his name? But
James Moody.
Yeah. Is that right?
Field goal kicker or Jake Moody?
Jake Moody. And I was thinking that, he had something bad happen that probably wasn't his fault. I don't know if the launch trajectory was too low, but yeah, it's just a complicated thing the way we talk about kickers, and I personally think a lot of it has to do with what a real man is. Like, you don't really belong on the field as part of the deal.
So I think that really brings us to the idea of toxic masculinity, right? Where there's this feeling that, oh, if you're not doing certain specific actions, then you're not actually masculine. And a lot of those actions are coded within violence, right? Where it's like, oh, we celebrate the guys who make the big hits. We celebrate the guys who take someone out. And that's what people think is masculine. But the thing is like, that's not what masculinity is. Like, masculinity is caring and protecting and helping people and making sure that, you're the one taking the hits, right? As opposed to letting someone who's being oppressed take those hits.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think I call football corrosive of, drug and religion, is that it's that part, in my opinion, is a feature and not a bug. It's part of the reason we're riveted by football is because it's a part of the American character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it is a very violent sport. Like there's no other way to describe it other than that. Like it is violence. It is sanctioned violence that happens on the field. And, we try to put some rules around it and make it slightly less violent. But anytime your sport revolves around the idea of physically attacking someone and taking them to the ground, you really can't separate that concept from what you're watching.
Yeah, I think about it. It's a land war. It's a game about land wars. And every weekend we have, and not weekend because it's 5 days a week now, but this ritual celebration of land wars. And it gets ingrained in us, solving your issues with violence and, this acquisitive nature toward land. These are the things that are stuck in my head right now. But I want to talk about Orange County because I imagine you were a kid. You came from Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, so I was born in Philadelphia, but my parents moved to Seal Beach in Orange County when I was about 6 months old. So for all intents and purposes, like I'm a West Coast kid.
So how did you take Minnesota? Did you spend much of the off season there? That seems like what was that like?
Yeah, so me, the first 5 years I was with the team, my wife and I actually lived out there full time because we hadn't really, like, we were making sure we were saving up our money and being, very fiscally responsible, because the thing with the NFL is, especially as a kicker or punter, you never know when you're going to lose your job, right? And so if you approach it as, oh, these paychecks are always going to be coming in, well, that's how you end up on a 30 for 30 episode about going broke. Like you have to recognize the fact this money is supposed to last you for the rest of your life. So after our 5th year in the state, and we really enjoyed living there. It's actually a really cool state. You just got to be careful when you get out into kind of the boony areas outside of the actual cities, because there's a reason they elected Michelle Bachmann about a decade ago. But yeah, we'd saved up enough money to move to Southern California because my parents still live here. My wife's parents still live here, and we want our kids to be able to see their grandparents. And it took us a while because. As you know, Southern California is not a cheap place to live.
No. Well, I mean, Lev, I'm going to let you get one in, but I just wanted to bring this up just to bring us into the moment here and where you are as a political figure, not just a writer and a football player, but a political candidate. I always talk about how Orange County has changed. I'm in Sacramento talking about Sacramento's changed, but when I interned at the Times in '89, and I had my first exploration of Orange County, and I thought of it as kind of rednecky. And now it's very much more Southeast Asian, I think. And the character of it's changed. But how have you watched it change? How have you seen it change over the course of your life, and what role did that play in you becoming politically active there?
Yeah, so growing up, Orange County, it was definitely conservative leaning. This was back when Dana Rohrabacher was our congressional rep, and I mean, he was basically a Russian agent that we just decided to never prosecute for whatever reason. But the thing is it was a lot of like, the mindset was just leave me alone. I don't want to have to care about politics, right? Like that was kind of the prevailing mindset of a lot of people. And then unfortunately, you also had a history of racial violence within Orange County. I mean, it's, the KKK was operating in Huntington Beach for a while. They burned down a black beach club back in the early 1900s. And when I was a kid, I heard from other people, hey, you got to be careful when you're in Huntington Beach because you've got the skinheads and the surf Nazis. And like that was just the reality of Huntington Beach. And as time went on, it seemed like Huntington Beach was moving past that. So like into the, early 2000s, mid 2000s, like that's why my wife and I decided to move back there, because we're like, hey, it looks like it's going in the right direction. It's no longer, an absolutely like just Nazi stronghold, because it really did used to be a Nazi stronghold. Unfortunately, now it has once again become a Nazi stronghold. And for whatever reason, Huntington Beach seems to be the magnet for the far right and in the fascist oriented parts of American culture, where they decide, hey, here's where we're going to set up shop, and then we're going to try to spread from here.
So, Chris, I wonder too, I mean, you're very articulate when it comes to politics. What in your background kind of inspires you to speak out? Because I'm sure, when you spoke out on like gay marriage and stuff in the NFL, that probably didn't do you a lot of favors with the team or the ownership or whoever?
No, it
Because
did
I mean,
not.
the NFL is very buttoned down. So it takes a strong impulse to speak out. And I'm wondering what in your background or upbringing kind of geared you towards that.
Yeah, so I'm sure my parents would probably say anti-authoritarian tendencies would probably be one of the big reasons. But as a kid, I always loved reading. I loved reading growing up. I still read a ton of books, and I'm a huge nerd. Like I love sci-fi fantasy, and you know the big story in a lot of sci-fi fantasy stuff is that you have the hero, right? And in order for the hero to actually be the hero has to do the right thing. And what I internalized was doing the right thing is speaking up for other people when you are in a position to do so. Because if you want someone to speak up for you, well, then you would want that, right? Like if you're in a position where you need help, you want someone to help you. You want someone to speak up for you. So if you're in the position where you can provide that help, where you can support someone else, then you have to do it. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart. And I think if everyone just kind of sort of internalized that and understood that when you protect other people, you're actually protecting yourself, our country would be in a much happier and more effective space than what we're currently at.
I think of, can I ask this? Because I do think of your career as entering a new phase this year. And I don't want to assume people know too much, but back in February, you had a public appearance that made the papers. Can you...
15-year HB resident, I'm here to speak out against both the plaque and the current city council. As the community made clear at the Library Commission meeting last Tuesday, everyone is in favor of a plaque to celebrate the library, but the vast majority are against including a MAGA acrostic. Okay? Unfortunately, it's clear that this council does not listen, so instead I'm going to take my time to say what MAGA has stood for these past 3 weeks. MAGA stands for trying to erase trans people from existence. MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. MAGA stands for censorship and book bans. MAGA stands for firing air traffic controllers while planes are crashing. MAGA stands for firing the people overseeing our nuclear arsenal. MAGA stands for firing military veterans and those serving them at the VA, including canceling research on veteran suicide. MAGA stands for cutting funds to education, including for disabled children. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat, but that is what it is. I will now engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience.
Get the heck! Get out! Get out! I assume people know too much, but back in February, you had a public appearance that made the papers. Can you explain that to people and what role?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so basically I was arrested for peaceful civil disobedience in front of the Huntington Beach City Council. It was during one of the normal scheduled city council meetings. And the thing with the Huntington Beach City Council is that all 7 of them are very proudly MAGA. They've been trying to screw with our public library for the past, I think it's going on 3 years now. And it started with, they tried to ban books from the children's section, claiming they were filled with pornography. The books were all LGBTQ oriented, and they weren't pornography because if you put pornography in a library, you get arrested. That is a crime. So yeah, that was their first attempt to attack the library. Then when people got really upset about that, they tried to establish a book banning board, which they called like an oversight committee. And everyone was just like, well, no, you're just trying to ban books. You're just doing it in a different way. So we initiated a ballot initiative measure to get a ballot petition going, so that way we could get rid of this book banning board. Then they tried to privatize the library. People got really upset about that. So we did another ballot initiative to say, okay, if you try to privatize the library, it has to come to a public vote of the entire city. Thankfully, we passed both of those ballot initiatives in July, so we did manage to protect the library. So those were like the first 3 instances, and then the one that really kind of like got me going, because I've been speaking out against these things. I'm like, why are you messing with our public library? Like, it's supposed to be an apolitical space. They wanted to celebrate the library's 50th year anniversary with a plaque that said magical, alluring, galvanizing, and adventurous, as words to describe the library, which if you notice, the first letters of those words spell out MAGA. And the font on that plaque for those words was the largest on the plaque. So the library's name itself was actually the smallest font on the plaque. Yeah. And it was at that point where I'm just like, why do you not understand that people don't want you to do this, that you are essentially trying to exert your will on everyone else, even though it's unpopular, and what you stand for is un-American. Like what MAGA stands for, and I said this in my speech to the city council, is explicitly a Nazi movement. MAGA is about white nationalism. MAGA is about silencing people. I mean, we're seeing that right now with everything that's going on with Charlie Kirk. Like it is full on a modern day fascist movement. And there are a lot of people who refuse to accept that that is the truth, but it is. And I say this as someone who has a degree in history and political science. Like I have studied this stuff. It doesn't take a PhD to figure out, hey, when the brown shirts are marching in the streets, you might have a Nazi problem.
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying earlier about, kind of like the masculine, it wasn't the masculine role, but like you were saying, why I asked why you speak out on stuff, and you were saying, to be in service of people and to help people if they're down, and if we don't do that, then things fall apart. And I feel like the thing with Charlie Kirk was he was somebody that punched down. He was attacking people constantly. He wasn't doing this in service of anything. And I think it also relates to the way the MAGA politicians have tried to govern is through executive order, through these dictates, because they're too weak or not smart enough or can't unite around actual legislation, to do some of the things they're doing. So that's why Trump's resorting to these orders. And that's why so many people have automatically had such a hard time with his administration. It's not like necessarily we are all in denial that there's some sort of problem with our immigration system. It's that when you try and do it like a dictator, that's when it becomes really problematic. And they're not passing these laws using the democratic function. So, I mean, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I mean, I feel like there's this connection between your idea of service and then the way these other guys govern.
Yeah, and so and really the key takeaway there is that their idea of service is to only serve a very specific subset of the American population who they think deserves to have everything that they want. And that specific subset of the American population is white, Christian, and tends to be evangelical. So that's their vision of what America should be. A lot of the rest of us and me, our vision of America is a place where everyone has an opportunity to succeed, where you are not held back due to your race, due to your religion, due to your sexuality, due to your gender identity. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. We will give you the same opportunity to succeed as everyone else, and then it's up to you whether or not you do it. But in order for that to happen, we have to recognize when we are not giving people those opportunities. And right now, we are taking away those opportunities from so many people. like this whole, crackdown on immigration. Like these are people who are working hard to support their families. They are not criminals, and they are being rounded up and kidnapped by masked agents of the state and sent to torture conditions. Like I don't know if you saw the report on the South Korean workers who were detained. But like that's our detention system. Like it wasn't anything out of the ordinary how they were detained. Like that's just how our immigration detention system works. And frankly, it's a war crime. Like we are treating people terribly. So yeah, I really do think it comes down to what is your vision of America? And does that include everyone that lives within it, or does it only include a small portion of that?
You taken all of this and decided to run for state assembly. After what's gone on with Charlie Kirk, which I think is a new chapter for the country, how do you feel about running for public office? I mean, does it change your perspective on what you're putting on the line here?
Yeah, no, I mean, it obviously makes it more clear that, we're living in scary times. We're living in dangerous times. And the thing is like, I condemn political violence. Like everyone condemns political violence, gun violence. Like these are things that as human beings, we all condemn. And the fact is though, is that what Charlie Kirk preached, what he talked about was creating this kind of world that we currently live in. He just never thought it was going to happen to him. And so, yeah, and the thing that really sucks right now is to see a whole bunch of like mainstream media outlets talk about how, Charlie Kirk did politics the right way. Or, Charlie Kirk was this, great bastion of free speech. The man ran a website that tried to fire teachers. Like you can't claim that you are, a free speech champion when you're trying to remove people from their jobs. And while it's okay for people to mourn Charlie Kirk, I don't think we should be holding him up as some exemplar of the American ideal, which is currently what they're trying to do. Because if you look in Charlie Kirk's own words, he was racist, he was bigoted, and he preached hate, and he did it consistently year after year after year. And so, yeah, it sucks that he got shot. Like, we should not have that in a civilized society. But at the same time, we shouldn't be espousing his views, because that also doesn't lead to a civilized society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're talking about that Ezra Klein piece from the New York Times. I keep saying new chapters. I think his career enters a new chapter after that shitty column. It's just an indefensible thing. It's a generally smart guy, another California guy. I think I defined him, intelligent, but that, I don't know if that's the force down from the top at the Times that makes you do that, but his career is going to have a different trajectory.
Yeah, no. Well, and I think it's also a sign of how much our country has shifted to the idea that you can't fight back against fascism, right? Like, there's this idea that we have to have bipartisan agreement on everything. That if someone espouses strict Nazi ideologies, that we have to then say, oh, well, that's just one side of the story. Let's debate whether or not that's right. It's like, no, we already had that debate. That debate was called World War II and the Nazis lost. Like, we don't need to have that debate again. Someone's existence is not something we should be debating about. Like, that needs to be a red line that we do not cross. But with all these apologias that, people are just like, oh, well, that's like, oh, Charlie Kirk, it's terrible. He was this great free speech guy. It's like, you can't even quote what he said in your articles. like if that's the case, maybe he wasn't such a great guy.
So, part of what gave Charlie Kirk his power and position of influence is, this kind of aggrieved, white male, like their feelings are hurt, or they're feeling some sort of economic pinch. What do you pinpoint, like a lot of this turn towards fascism, this turn towards race baiting and attacking these people? What do you attribute that to, and how do you address that as a politician without, falling for their maybe baseline motivations?
Right. Yeah. So that's actually a really complex question, because the answer to it is that this started with the original founding of America, with the genocide of the Native Americans, and then continued with the deliberate sabotage of Reconstruction. And until America addresses its sordid past and understands that those undercurrents are still going through the country, then we're just going to keep coming back to this same point over and over and over again. And the individual circumstances may change, but the underlying tension is always going to be there until we address the fact that about a third of America wants to be racist and is now not shy about showing that. And how you address that? You have to look at what other countries did. I mean, you have to look at what happened in South Africa after apartheid. They had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission where they said, hey, here's where all the bad stuff happened. We're going to try to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It happened after World War II with the Nuremberg trials, right? It said, even though you were following orders, that doesn't justify committing genocide upon an entire group of people. And we were kind of moving in that direction, with diversity, equity initiatives. And I think that really set off a lot of these people, because they saw, frankly, they saw a black man become president and they lost their fucking minds. They're like, holy shit, we're losing our white America. And the thing is, it's never been a white America. America has been strong and successful when it's been diverse, when it has embraced immigration, when it has taxed the rich and taxed corporations and made sure that everyone had a starting point that they could achieve something from. And we're not at that point right now. And a lot of it is being driven by, racism, as I said. But the other big part that it's being driven by is the fact that we have the largest wealth inequality gap that we've ever had in this country. Like, we have so much power in the hands of so few people. And we've seen that they do not use that power wisely. I mean, look at what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter. He's turned it into a far-right propaganda machine. Look at what Jeff Bezos is doing with the Post. Like, he literally just fired their only black opinion columnist because she quoted Charlie Kirk accurately. Like, that was her crime, was doing actual journalism. I mean, I don't think I'm going out on a limb when I say having billionaires is corrosive to a democracy. And so we need to figure out how to get rid of the billionaires, because our system cannot co-inhabit the same space that billionaires do. Like they don't work together.
How do you think that's going to play in Orange County? That last
Oh,
thing.
it's going to be an uphill struggle for sure. I'm under no delusions there. It's,
okay. Well, I have this question because I think it's great that you brought up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That's like my pet project. I think we need that. But my really specific take on it is we need a Media Truth and Reconciliation Commission. In terms of, I lived in New York. I talked to Donald Trump on the phone when I was doing journalism, and they gave him such a pass, such a lie. I mean, never mind the Apprentice was a lie. It was a ratty old apartment that we configured into making this larger than life figure. But you brought up Reconstruction, and I think it's just fundamental that Americans understand what happened then. And the average American could not tell you anything about Reconstruction.
No,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically Reconstruction was, we won the Civil War, and then we decided, okay, now we got to rebuild America, right? Like we need to make sure that Black people have the same opportunities as everyone else. And so we're going to reconfigure all these, various governmental functions and how society works in order to make sure that happens. And then the Southern Democrats, who at the time were, that was the Democratic Party, they said, nope, we want to be really racist. We're going to make sure that we start passing stuff that is technically legal, but is also racist and disenfranchises Black people. I mean, that's why
these people are the backbone of today's Republican Party, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So and that's the other thing that like I freaking loathe hearing from the right wing. It's like, oh well, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and I'm like, yeah, those Republicans are today's Democrats, right? And then those Democrats back then who were racist, they're now today's Republicans. The parties changed names, but the stances, like those, if you believed in what Abraham Lincoln stood for, congratulations, you're a Democrat. Like you believe in freedom, you believe in truth and justice. And so what ended up happening is that, that's why we eventually got to the civil rights struggles of the 1960s, right? Is because there were things like Brown versus Board of Education, because the schools were being segregated. It was because we had stuff like Plessy versus Ferguson, where, it's like, hey, a Black man can be separate but equal. And it's like, no, that's not true. You can't say someone is separate but equal. Either we're all equal or none of us are equal.
Yeah, we're moving back that way. What do you got, Lev?
Well, yeah. So moving forward, like how do you, in a place like Huntington Beach, how do you win people over? And like,
It's again, it's going to be tough. It's an uphill struggle because the district does lean about 6 or 7 points Republican. The actual voting makeup is 32% Democratic, 38% Republican, and then 30% independent, no party preference. So in order to win here, you have to get the Democrats to turn out, right? Like you have to give your base a reason to turn out. And then you have to figure out a way to reach those no party preference independent people who were like, that's what I was like growing up. I just didn't want to have to care about politics. You have to get them to understand that like, this is it. Like, this is for all the marbles. If you don't show up now, we won't have a democracy any longer. And that if you want to not care about politics, well, that means you need a government that works and isn't going to oppress you if you say the wrong thing, because politics will certainly start caring about you if Trump is allowed to consolidate more power, if the GOP is allowed to consolidate more power. And so, yeah, it's just figuring out, okay, how do I reach those people? And then, an encouraging sign is the fact that we actually did pass our library ballot initiatives back in July, and it wasn't close. Like the first ballot passed 60-40, and the second one passed 59-41, which in a city like Huntington Beach is a real sign that people are getting fed up with what this administration is doing and what they stand for. And so it becomes my task to be, okay, how do I mobilize these people? How do I get the people who can be convinced but don't understand yet why we should be fighting, like why they need to show up and why they need to vote and fight against fascism? Because like I can't do it on my own. I want to fight, but if it's just me out there, I'm not going to accomplish much. I'm going to be honest. And so it becomes like, okay, do you really care about the idea of America as a democracy? Because that's what I am fighting for. The idea of us as a country, that we can all coexist together and that we're not trying to kill each other. And I don't know. We'll see if people show up for that. But then the other part of it too is also making people aware of the fact that I think Donald Trump is going to try to go all the way with what he's doing. And by that, I mean, he's going to try to seek a third term, whether it's legal or not. He's going to keep sending the U.S. military into American cities, which we're seeing. And that if he does try going all the way, how do we as Californians protect ourselves? Right. And I got to say, it feels really weird to be on the side saying states' rights, but this is a clear-cut case of why states' rights are important, is when you have tyrannical overreach by the federal government. And I'm not talking about masking mandates or vaccine requirements. That's not tyrannical overreach. That's public health. But when you have that overreach, how can the states protect themselves? Because we've already seen Donald Trump attack the states, sending in the National Guard, sending in the U.S. Marines, preventing states from getting federal disbursements that they are legally obligated. The federal government is legally obligated to pay out to those states. Like, that is our tax money. It's supposed to be going to programs that keep our people healthy and keep people housed and pay for public education. And it's like he's using the withholding of that money to punish states he doesn't agree with. And that's what our founders fought against. Like that was the whole reason they took up arms, was because there was a corrupt king who wanted to try to control them. And they said, no, we are going to be a democracy. We are going to be a land of free people. Now, granted, they also owned slaves, so they didn't actually understand, the full concept of what freedom meant. But the idea was there, is that, if you have a tyrannical monarch, then you rise up against it. That's what America is.
I want to talk to you about why you're such an anomaly in sports, why jocks are so bad at dealing with politics. And I listened to this podcast that, what's his name? God, no, I'm going to look at my note because I'm blanking on dude's name. Dominic Foxworth. He did an episode with Howard Bryant where they talked about the 1987 NFL strike. Do you remember that strike, Love?
Yeah, but I don't remember much of the details.
Okay,
of
well,
it.
the thing is that they had a lot of players holding out. They had a strong union, but some of the stars, I remember Tony Dorsett was one, and another quarterback who folded. And part of the reason that they folded is and this was Howard Bryant's analysis, is that they conflate the idea of sticking with the team, teamwork, the ethos of that, with the franchise. And that helped them fold. Do you feel like, what do you think the factors are that keep pro athletes from being, because if they use their platform, they could do amazing things.
Right.
What do you think holds them back? Well, there's no Tommy Smith and Muhammad Ali or even, Kareem these days.
Yeah, I think it's a couple factors. The first one is as specifically relates to the case of football, is the fact that your earning career is so short. And that the average football career is right around, I think, like 3.5 years. You get pension at 4 years, so there's a reason why they put pension at 4 years. But yeah, it becomes very hard to convince people, right, to give up. Like, say you needed to strike for a year to get whatever you needed for collective bargaining. That's a third of most of guys' total lifetime